Introduction. At some point, you might have come across dark psychology and pondered the mysteries that follow this concept. Within dark psychology, many different constructs lead towards varying personality traits and techniques, as well as ways to reduce or avoid victimization from individuals who use it. This audiobook will make you more aware of what dark psychology is and what it can do. I will teach you how to spot these practices and how to use them to your advantage, regardless of your skill level. I will show you many beginner-friendly and high-level strategies and teachings, ensuring you walk away after listening to this audiobook with an improved knowledge on the implementation and detection of dark psychology used in various scenarios. My name is Maxwell Jensen, and I want to show you that with a little bit of training from the right person, you can transform your ability to detect dark psychology and use it to improve your quality of life. Learning about dark psychology will help you reduce the chances of victimization and allow it to serve you in any situation from now on. Once you improve your knowledge, know how to apply it, and see dark psychology for what it is, you will no longer fall prey to manipulation personally or professionally. You will learn the techniques that dark psychology practitioners have used for ages to persuade others to accomplish their goals in great time. People are willing to pay small fortunes, much more than the average price of this audiobook, to learn the exact same teachings I share in these pages. I will get you to a level that decreases chances of succumbing to a dark artist and how to go about implementing these tactics unnoticed while still being effective. With my help and expertise, you will be fully equipped with the skills and knowledge you need to become truly powerful. Have you heard the proverb Homo homini lupus? The literal translation is, man is wolf to man, written by philosopher Plautus, 254 to 184 BC. It references situations where people act in similarity to creatures in the wild. And in this context, it's true, without a defense mechanism or being ill-prepared can make you the unsuspecting prey to another predator. So you must understand the concept here and the ways to detect when some of these techniques are used on you, or to be able to use them yourself, like reading body language or spotting manipulations. And ask yourself, are you sure you aren't already being preyed upon or made the victim? The strategies and teaching that you're about to learn have proven time and time again to yield swift yet effective results. Each chapter will provide you with actionable steps that will help improve your knowledge of dark psychology. If you follow my training, you can rest assured knowing you will not fall prey to manipulations or victimizations, and this will ultimately bring you to a higher point of personal control and accomplishment. The first step into the dark. Stepping into the darkness of the human psyche, contrary to its phrasing, will enlighten you to aspects of yourself and the people around you. Dark psychology is present in all of us, and it is easily mistaken as another part of the psychological spectrum. It plays a huge role in how we behave and how our process around thought and action takes place. This is the dark continuum that we move into, and the degrees vary according to each individual and how far they choose to delve into that spectrum. This will all be explained in detail the further you go into this audiobook. You will soon be able to recognize the signs of an individual moving into that spectrum and towards what is known as the dark singularity. The personality traits here have similar aspects and come down to actions that are taken without purpose and are vicious in nature. This guide will help you to spot these personalities in advance and take action to avoid becoming the next victim. You can, however, gain a lot of success from learning to apply the techniques that are associated with dark psychology. Many influential business people use these techniques. For example, Steve Jobs famously employed it in his business ventures to persuade partners and employees to follow him in risky and ultimately profitable financial journeys. This guide will give you, the listener, the knowledge and skills to use the same techniques and help with future ventures in both your private life as well as your personal life. You always have the choice of whether or not you become the predator or the prey. You just need the proper tools. The first step into the dark. Stepping into the darkness of the human psyche, contrary to its phrasing, will enlighten you to aspects of yourself and the people around you. Dark psychology is present in all of us, and it is easily mistaken as another part of the psychological spectrum. It plays a huge role in how we behave and how our process around thought and action takes place. This is the dark continuum that we move into, and the degrees vary according to each individual and how far they choose to delve into that spectrum. This will all be explained in detail the further you go into this book. You will soon be able to recognize the signs of an individual moving into that spectrum and towards what is known as the dark singularity. The personality traits here have similar aspects and come down to actions that are taken without purpose and are vicious in nature. This guide will help you to spot these personalities in advance and take action to avoid becoming the next victim. You can, however, gain a lot of success from learning to apply the techniques that are associated with dark psychology. Many influential business people use these techniques. For example, Steve Jobs famously employed it in his business ventures to persuade partners and employees to follow him in risky and ultimately profitable financial journeys. This guide will give you, the reader, the knowledge and skills to use the same techniques and help with future ventures in both your private life as well as your personal life. You always have the choice of whether or not you become the predator or the prey. You just need the proper tools. Chapter 1. Turning Dark Psychology Upside Down. Dark psychology follows the construct of the human condition and the nature of one person to prey on one another without purpose. All humans experience brief occurrences of these psychotic impulses and have the ability to terrorize any living thing. Luckily, morality steps in, and few choose to act upon these desires. Dark psychology looks to understand the nature behind these deviant and sometimes criminal tendencies, as well as the emotions, thoughts, and views that lead to predator-like behavior. We sometimes have ideas about treating another person poorly or hurting them without mercy or compassion. These thoughts and impulses exist even in your mind, whether you realize it or not, only being acted upon by a small number of individuals that choose to go towards the darker space of their thoughts. Dark psychology is in place to tell us that these predatory acts are not without purpose and are not without a goal. Truthfully, the majority of human behavior linked to evil actions is not without purpose, however indistinct the intention. This is because our frontal lobe has made us into apex creatures, and the power of thought has allowed us to possess apex brutality. Dark singularity and the dark continuum. Dark psychology is defined as a potential between all of us to exert violent and malicious actions. All aggressive human behavior, dysfunctional and hostile acts, falls on a continuum of purposiveness that is defined by Michael Nusatelli as the dark continuum. The dark singularity refers to the area of evil that the predator attempts to close in without reaching the pinnacle of darkness within that said singularity. Although many people are fascinated by the topic of psychopaths and serial killers, The majority of so-called predators preying on humans do not participate in the act of murder or sexual deviance. An estimated 70% of human predators victimize others without the involvement of assault, where the remaining 30% is considered threatening as they seek physical human contact. These behaviors are found somewhere within the dark continuum, and the majority of them are categorized as subtle, brief thoughts or small shortcomings. The fact is that dark psychology is omnipresent, and everyone has the idea or, at least, the utterance of violence or predatory daydream. Luckily for us as a society, the majority of humans have a low dark factor equation compared to that of a predatory individual. The place within the human condition that possesses the potential for these thoughts is known as the dark factor. This is one of the more abstract terms used in dark psychology, as it is difficult to articulate. The dark factor is higher in individuals who show criminal or deviant behavior, as they tend to move more towards the dark singularity at an accelerated pace. Over centuries, philosophers and ministerial writers have tried to explain this occurrence, exploring historical studies of malicious behavior. This phenomenon is only seen in humans, who can harm another with no apparent rational motive. It is assumed that there is a part within us that fuels dark and remorseless actions, simply because we are humans. There has not been a human that has walked the earth who does not have a dark side, and it is believed that this characteristic is void of logical reasoning and rationality. It is part of the human condition, and there is no known explanation as to why. It is assumed that this dark side is unpredictable in the sense of who acts upon the malicious notions and to what extent they will go without compassion. Individuals who rape, murder, and torture within the realms of dark psychology point to the actions of predatory people who only seek validation by mistreating others. Humans can be hazardous, especially to themselves. There are countless reasons for this, and the study of dark psychology tries to analyze that part of the psyche. Dark psychology is, as explained above, present in all humans, regardless of who they are or how benevolent they might be. However, because dark psychology can easily be misunderstood, examples in history have a tendency to reveal its dynamic and destructive behaviors too late. Modern-day psychology will define a psychopath as a person without repentance for their malicious actions. This is where the dark continuum comes into play, pointing out the varying degrees of severity of violence and victimization that can occur without purpose or any reasonable motivation. To understand the underlying motives and triggers would enable society to reduce the influence of dark psychology. This is by the greater capabilities of identifying, diagnosing, and possibly reducing the dangers that already exist. The benefits of this knowledge are becoming aware and accepting that we all have the potential to be evil, reducing any urge to act upon those thoughts. Also, understanding that it fits our original purpose of struggling to survive during the evolutionary process. Creating awareness of this will ultimately shift the reality of the individual and help them to educate others as well as gaining a new kind of power. Chapter 2. Getting a grip on the dark triad personalities. The dark triad personalities, which are prominently offensive yet non-pathological, are known as Machiavellianism, subclinical narcissism, and subclinical psychopathy. In a sample done with 245 students, the three constructs were measured and examined in a variety of laboratories, and self-report correlates with standard measures. Intercorresponding measures were used but did not yield comparable results. The only conclusion that matched was the quality of being sharply disagreeable. Low neuroticism was a discernible factor for subclinical psychopaths. Showing low conscientiousness in Machiavellians and psychopaths, and only a minor of affiliation with cognitive ability was exhibited in narcissism. It was also displayed that self-enhancement, on two scored indexes without bias by narcissists and, to a lesser extent, psychopaths. Paulhus and Williams, 2002. They concluded that these three personalities have overlapping designs, but are very distinct. The dark triad personalities. Narcissism. These are shameless self-promoters that are continually trying to be the center of attention. This is, however, a state that is misunderstood due to the prolonged time of it not being recognized or diagnosed. Many of the characteristics of these individuals come across as productive and friendly. Many people aspire to be like them, and they are generally compelling in the professional aspects of their lives. It is in their nature to manage others with their leadership skills and ability. They are known risk takers and are more driven and not afraid of change. This is not always a good thing, as this regularly motivates them to a point where they will stop at nothing to achieve their goals and stay at the top. They become destructive towards their opposition when challenged, and often there is nothing they won't do to reach the desired outcome. They also disregard standard rules that apply to individuals who are present in their position, being socially or professionally. They are not afraid to use underhanded tactics like cheating, toe-stepping, or cutting corners to achieve their set goals and destroy the opposition. Narcissists will also never accept that they are wrong. They tend to react passionately when they make a mistake and are called out by someone they consider a superior. Criticism is not well received and wounds them to a deeper level. This might cause them to seek vengeance on the challenger and try to eliminate them. Subclinical narcissism is difficult to diagnose and to spot. This makes it especially damaging as the victim only recognizes it once it is already shocking and has already caused damage. Machiavellianism. This trait is noticeable by interpersonal manipulation. It can also be associated with particular emotional patterns and social perception. The three subcategories that are included are deceiving within interpersonal relationships, viewing human nature in a disillusioned light, and a lack of morality. There is a correlation between Machiavellianism and low levels of empathy, as well as high levels of alexithymia, anhedonia, anxiety, and depression. This made it possible to gain a better understanding of its emotional core. Individuals who possess these characteristics use interpersonal manipulation such as deceit, flattery, aloof, and amoral viewpoints that they have taken to promote personal goals. These individuals seem to naturally have an uncanny ability to read the minds of others and understand social situations. This allows them to easily manipulate the people around them to serve in their own goals and motivations. Many questions exist around the abilities of the Machiavellian. As an example, studies have shown an external link between these traits and overall intelligence. It is also speculated that these individuals have a better theory of mind or mind-reading ability. They tend to be seen as having a lack of being involved with others and also displaying detachment toward their peers. These disconnections emotionally seem to correlate with two emotional shortcomings, alexithymia and anhedonia. People who have mental conditions like schizophrenia, depression, or anxiety also display a similar kind of emotional detachment. The relationship between these deficits and Machiavellianism characteristics varies depending on the disorder and the time studied. It still begs the question of what lies at the core of the emotional impairments of this behavior in a healthy society. Psychopathy. As a group, the characteristics of a psychopath are considered violations of social norms. They do not always display behavior that is antisocial or self-defeating. Instead, they might strategically display adaptive behavior to imitate others in response to social cues they have observed from others as their normal response. This has been studied to find the correlation between these traits and unfair behavior to see if it can be moderated by punishment to encourage better behavior. Primary psychopathy can be identified by insensitive and shallow manipulations, as well as deceptive appeal. Secondary psychopathy can be defined by an individual acting impulsively and without long-term aspirations. Their responses tend to be hostile, and psychopaths are known for serial criminal behavior. Criminal or clinical factors do not limit this. Individuals with these characteristics are found within the general population but are hard to identify. Their traits would be shown as immoral or antisocial, but they can hide these parts by acting in a way society accepts as the norm. It is unclear whether these individuals focus on economic rewards or if they gauge personal interactions to steer clear of adverse reactions. Should they not be able to predict unfair efforts from someone close, they might respond with unjust actions towards this person regardless of future interactions. Chapter 3. Making use of body language. Humans have used body language as a way of nonverbal communication for millions of years. Facial expressions, hand gestures, personal markers, symbols, and chemical scents enabled our ancestors to survive in environments that were not always favorable. These traits have stuck around, and we will still respond to these cues, however subtle, in our everyday interactions. This can be observed in nonverbal communications that are controlled by the brain. The mind is a very complex entity where the correlation between nonverbal actions and psychology can be examined. From infancy, there are bodily gestures that we use to communicate. As we grow and our behaviors are decoded and encouraged by our peers, we learn how to communicate more precisely and effectively. And when we learn to communicate verbally, we still rely on body language to get the message across. This includes tone, volume, speed, eye contact, and posture. All these factors play a role in getting the desired message across, along with the choice of words. The nonverbal part is what can be seen as the primary psychological message. This message communicates on both levels, and our reaction will base itself here. The brain controls the reactions based on what it likes or dislikes. For example, when it senses something it dislikes, it will turn the body away and the pupils will constrict. However, when it enjoys the view, the pupils will dilate and move the body towards the source. The brain will also trigger other bodily cues of discomfort or pleasure. It subconsciously compels the individual to voice this, whether you actually do or not. Negatively, the body will tense up, want to move or fidget, and sometimes display a grim facial expression. Positively, the individual will relax in their posture, a smile would be present, and they would feel the need to voice their pleasure. The body talks. There are simple cues that you can use to read people around you and nonverbal actions that carry the desired message. Knowing what to look for and what to use to send information can make a big difference in how you respond. Here are some of the cues to look for. This will teach you how to use the signals and how to respond to get the desired reactions from a person that you interact with. A subtle cue is closing the eyes while engaging in a conversation about an unpleasant subject. This is the person's attempt to hide from their surroundings. Be aware this isn't only used in reaction to fear, but rather to show objection and, in a way, try to get away from the person or situation. It is a subtle way the brain displays annoyance, and it can be used when you want to get out of a spot without being outright hostile. Do note that some people could ignore this nonverbal cue or be blatantly oblivious to it. Covering the mouth is a way to try and stop someone from saying something they do not wish to voice. They can use a palm, fist, or the back of the hand to do so. A fake cough might be used to disguise this. This is a gesture everyone learns from childhood, and like most gestures, becomes a subconscious act to carry the message across. Avoid this gesture when needing to come across as truthful and open, and watch individuals if there is a suspicion that someone might be keeping something from you. A person chewing on a small object like a pen, the arm of their glasses, or even chewing gum can indicate stress. They are using this as a method to try and alleviate the anxious feelings, similar to how they found comfort when they were a baby and breastfed from their mother. Being supportive of them or providing comfort can be helpful during a time of worry. Improving your appearance is an indication of trying to attract the attention of someone you find compelling. The individual will attempt to highlight their best features and draw attention to them. This is not only to attract a potential mate or companion, but can be used on someone in a more desirable position. Someone crossing their arms during a conversation or interaction is a way to self-soothe and close themselves off, indicating anxiety. This means they are not receptive to the interaction and are blocking off any advances towards it. Getting the person to lower their arms and open up to the discussion is a technique used especially in a sales environment, for example, to reach the individual and increase the likelihood of them paying attention and buying the product or service. First impressions are crucial, and you can learn a lot from someone with a simple handshake. Someone taking your wrist with their free hand is trying to say that they can be trusted. Someone shaking your hand with a palm facing up and their free hand placed on top of yours is exhibiting sympathy. However, this is only if this gesture is made immediately. If this is done after the person holds your hand for some time, they are communicating to you who is in charge. Shaking hands with palms facing the floor indicate the individual's readiness to help. Lastly, people that touch the other person when shaking hands are communicating a need for companionship. The closer to the torso, the more company this person requires. Then there is a person fixing their tie or a part of their clothing. The meaning of this can vary depending on the situation. If a man does this near someone he finds attractive, more often than not, it means he likes them. This simple gesture can also indicate discomfort, as the person might be lying or wants to leave the situation they are in. When a person doesn't agree with an idea but does not want to speak up, they will start picking at hairs that aren't there. They most definitely disagree with the other person's opinion or statement, but they don't speak up regarding their own opinion. Someone sitting at a desk and placing their feet upon it can indicate a number of things. They could be displaying dominance by trying to show they are in charge, or they may be exhibiting disrespect or bad manners. In a few cases, it might just be a comfortable position for the individual to sit in, but it is encouraged only to sit that way at home if this is the case. A person sitting on a chair like a horse is also displaying dominance. People around this individual will tend to feel uncomfortable when this position is taken, as they can feel the aggression. Refrain from sitting down when they sit like this if you don't want to seem weak. Chapter 4. Emotional Influence, Dominating the Heart. Decisions made with the brain and decisions coming from the heart seldomly reflect the same conclusions. Logic does not influence the choices your heart makes, and analyzing the best outcome is not the heart's specialty. Emotions have a significant impact here and the roads we take. This is because we try to follow what feels right instead of what makes more sense. And that gut feeling you rely on so much sometimes leads you in a different direction and can steer you wrong. Looking at the variety of emotions that we experience, each one has an adverse effect on the choice we make. Take a look at sadness. This emotion creates feelings of despair or discourages the individual from partaking in activities. It can create feelings of disassociation and wanting to isolate oneself. In contrast, anger can create eagerness, and the individual will be more willing to take risks. It promotes blind confidence and dissipates any lingering fear. Happiness does not help in making decisions either, as people are more interested in the quantity of what is said rather than the quality. Emotions can make decisions more primal, and people are less likely to think about the range of solutions and instead rally the most immediate and primal thought. Although sorrow has its bad qualities, it can be used in a commercial sense, provoking the individual to act dutifully instead of analyzing the best course of action. Emotional roller coaster. The plethora of emotions that can create a response from people is easy to access once you know how to do so. Political parties use anger and fear to rally crowds, creating chains of thought to promote their political platforms. An example would be the party leader convincing the crowd to stand up against injustice. By listing how specific actions are creating bad situations for the listening crowd and what action should be taken as a resolution. This stirs up anger, a pack mentality, which creates a sheep-like following where they resort to more primitive way of thinking. Because anger makes people feel more confident and able to take risks, they lean towards the drastic solutions and surpass any rational solutions. So, how would you go about using emotions to influence those around you? To achieve this, there are 3 things to consider. What is this person's state of mind? Who are they directing their emotions towards? What is the reason for this feeling? Knowing the answers to these questions can create a gateway into the psyche of the person or people in your line of sight. Keep in mind that knowing these answers is key to steering people in the direction you want them to go. Even missing one answer can affect the outcome, as the knowledge surrounding these questions gives you the ability to get the person to do or say what you want when you want. This tactic can be used in multiple scenarios. People who work in sales and marketing play off of the emotions of clients to elicit a favorable response. They create fear of loss within the individuals by making them feel like they are about to lose out on a great opportunity. They create a sense of power and control by pushing the conversation one way while letting the individual lead. They also use a sympathy tactic by tugging on the heartstrings of the individual, getting information on their personal lives, and then relating to them to create the feeling of belonging. These are all working on the emotional aspect of a potential buyer's thought process and is used to push them towards the desired outcome. Making a strong emotional connection with the group of people that you are addressing will create a better rapport with them. Do not place barriers between yourself and your audience. Make sure that you are relatable and that they see you on equal grounds. If you have a high social standing, show that you are just like the people around you. If the audience expresses dislike towards you, show them that you are likable. If you seem unapproachable to the aforementioned crowd, do something to encourage them to approach you and show them that you are accessible. Don't put on a show for your audience and be genuine. If there is a slight suspicion regarding your authenticity, you will lose credibility and they will not respond. Being aware of what frame to use is also very important in your stance, whether you are using it to advance in speaking to the audience coming to a political event or using it in a business venture. Knowing the difference between what words to use can greatly affect the outcome. You could be using 2 different structures that cover the same topic and choose one that the audience is more likely to prefer. Have a story to tell the audience that you are talking to, a story that they will remember and share, and one that inspires them to act. We are hardwired to respond to stories, and this will drop the guard of your audience when they hear it. Stories create connections with others and make way for you to pull them deeper into your message. Using metaphors can make a speech more memorable and draw interest. Metaphors shape our worldviews and help us learn and discover. Words are not always enough, and to remedy this, use images that line up with your speech to further stimulate the mind. Make sure the way you present your speech is correct. The tone, volume, and speed are important and match the moment. Be aware of the wording you use. Rework with words that pack a more powerful punch. Learn 4 or 5 rhetorical devices, but don't forget the power of 3. Lastly, don't overdo it. Pushing too hard could result in negative backlash. Hey, it's Maxwell Jensen. As mentioned at the start of this audiobook, you have an exclusive offer available to you for a short period of time. In case you forgot to claim your 100% free, no strings attached Ultimate Mindset course by Intelligence Mastery, please can you make sure to do so now? The reason for this is in the next coming chapters, I will be discussing and referring back to parts of the course that Intelligence Mastery has created for you to improve your mindset. It will be pivotal to have this course available at all times, as when learning about self-improvement strategies, the Ultimate Mindset course will guide you to implement these strategies in a quick and effective manner. In case you forgot how to claim your free copy of the Ultimate Mindset course, search in your search browser's URL free.intelligencemastery.com. Remember, before listening any further, please do this now, as I will refer back to parts of the course throughout this audiobook. Chapter 5. The Power Manipulation Can Have. Manipulating someone is the act of using indirect tactics to control relationships, emotions, and behavior. This is practiced more often than you think. This could be expressing a certain emotion, but showing the opposite to control the action and perception of an individual. Manipulating others can have an evil effect and is directly correlated to emotional abuse. This is especially true in intimate relationships. Manipulation is mostly seen as negative when it harms another person. These people feel the need to be in control of their surroundings, and this comes from an underlying fear or anxiety. It is unhealthy to behave this way, and participating in this behavior can cause the individual to disconnect from their genuine self. And being manipulated can cause adverse effects to the one on the receiving end. Someone who falls victim to chronic abuse may experience feelings of depression, anxiety, develop unhealthy habits to cope, disregard their needs, and prioritize the manipulator. They are likely to hide the way they feel, make excuses, and continuously try to please this person. Manipulation can even go as far as making a victim question their sense of what is real and what is just in their head. Spotting manipulation. It is not always a conscious decision for someone to manipulate, and chances are they might not be fully aware that they are doing so. Others may be actively working on bettering their manipulative tactics. Passive-aggressive behavior can be considered manipulative, and it happens when an individual does not assert themselves to speak directly and be truthful for any reason. Individuals who display this behavior try to avoid you stealthily. This includes gossiping, giving the cold shoulder, silent treatment, small sabotages like blocking progress or procrastinating on purpose, as well as being overly kind while giving you the feeling that you will be harmed the instant you leave. This behavior is coy, and this makes it difficult for you to narrow down why or what is bothering you. What makes this behavior so harmful is that it is easier to deal with someone who voices their disagreement to your face than to have someone do so from behind your back. Understanding the motives behind passive-aggressive behavior can be difficult and creates confusion for the recipient. The goal here is to try and get even with you without directly speaking up. Don't hesitate to address the behavior when it happens. Diffuse it by letting them know you are aware of what is going on, explain how you have interpreted it, and question them on the accuracy of your observation. Dishonesty can also be used as a form of manipulation, as it can alter the perception of the person on the receiving end. This can be done intentionally to control the reaction or actions of another, and it is difficult to sense when this tactic is employed. Threatening someone can also be manipulative when done implicitly. The effectiveness can vary based on the extent of the threat and the measures taken if the victim did not adhere to the demands and time frame the threat. When done correctly, early implicit threats and late explicit threats yielded better results upon study and made the predator seem less aggressive. Withholding can play a significant role in manipulation, as these decisions are not made based on facts, but rather on the lack of information. This can steer the victim in the direction the perpetrator is leading them towards by keeping them in the dark. This gives them the ability to lead their victim blindly. Being kept away from loved ones creates a feeling of loneliness and dependence on the person using this tactic. It puts the victim in a position where they feel abandoned by everyone they were close to, becoming reliant on the person. This makes them easier to control and believe what the predator is saying. The victim will do anything to make them happy and to keep them from also abandoning them. Gaslighting is a term used more recently and describes the act of undermining an individual's reality by not acknowledging facts, their feelings, or the environment surrounding them. This form of manipulation turns them against themselves and who they are as a human being. This is a tactic used to avoid taking responsibility, tearing down another individual while simultaneously keeping them around. This is especially true if the victim is desperate to please or prove someone wrong. The gaslighter might even be oblivious to their own tactics and thinks of it as just being blatantly honest. Recognizing the effects of gaslighting can come down to looking at the following. You are frequently wondering if you are oversensitive. You feel confused and sometimes crazy. You are always saying sorry. You don't understand why you aren't happy. You regularly make excuses for your partner's actions. You know there is something wrong, but you are not sure what. You deliberately make false statements to steer clear of a warped reality and criticism. Making uncomplicated choices are difficult for you. You frequently wonder if you are good enough. To combat these effects, identify the problem between you and this person. Identify the truth from what is being distorted by keeping a journal. Decide for yourself if you are in a power struggle here. Take part in mental exercises to encourage a mindset shift. Allow yourself to experience all your emotions. Allow yourself to let go of some things. Talk to your loved ones. Focus on what you are feeling instead of what is right and what is wrong. Remind yourself that you can't control anyone's opinion, whether you are right or not. Be compassionate towards yourself. Self-care is very important. Chapter 6. Indoctrination in Mind Control. The act of mind control is the process of manipulating the thoughts of one person or a group of individuals systematically with unethical means of persuasion. This is to guide them into confronting to the wants of the manipulator and is often detrimental to the victim. This is a tactic that can be applied in a psychological sense, but is not limited to it and can destabilize an individual's sense of control over their actions, thoughts, emotions, or choices. Methods of mind control. Multiple methods exist to implement mind control because we have a complex psychological state, and many areas of the brain can be used by exercising different tactics. Isolation is a very powerful tool, but not always possible or practical. Manipulators will then resort to isolating the victim mentally. This can be accomplished in many different ways, from being criticized by a country to one-week seminars. This will limit other influences by exerting control over the incoming information. Criticism is another tool that can be used to isolate and is typically used by the manipulator to scrutinize the outside world and lay a claim to superiority. They want you to feel lucky to be associated with them. When large groups of people are targeted, generally, social proof and peer pressure are the chosen method to manipulate the newcomers. Social proof is a psychological occurrence where some people take on the beliefs and actions of others because they believe it to be fair. This is because they justify it with the thought that everyone is doing it. This is particularly effective when the individual is unsure of what to think or how to act. A lot of people will look at the people around them and what they are doing when placed in a similar situation and imitate what they see. Being afraid of being alienated is another state of mind that is frequently used to control people, especially newcomers. When a newcomer enters a group, they normally receive a warm welcome and eventually form new friendships. They see these friendships as profound and more meaningful than friendships they have had in the past. Consequently, they will start to doubt, and these relationships become a powerful tool to keep them in the group. Even if they aren't entirely on board, the world outside the group seems less appealing and very lonely. When something is constantly being repeated, it can be used as a compelling tactic. However simplistic this may seem, it can be highly effective. By repeating the same message over and over again, it becomes familiar and memorable. When repetition is accompanied by social proof, the message that is being delivered comes across without failure. Self-improvement tactics are proof that repetition works. It comes down to if you can improve yourself by repeatedly behaving in the desired manner to manipulate yourself into behaving in a certain way. Sleep deprivation or fatigue are mental and physical strain that make you less alert and more receptive to persuasion. Individuals who have not had any sleep for 21 hours were easier to persuade, according to a study that appears in the Journal of Experimental Psychology. The ultimate goal of the manipulator is to redefine the identity of the individual. They want you to conform to their wishes and abandon yourself, essentially becoming a robot. They want you to be someone that follows orders without question. Using all the different methods of manipulation tactics, as mentioned above, they will try to get a confession from you. This is to get you to admit that you believe that they are good and that their actions are with good intention. It might not seem like a big deal at the beginning, such as agreeing that the people in the group are fun and loving individuals. It might also be to validate some of their views. The trick behind this is getting you to agree to one thing and open you up to conform to more. You start to have a desire to back yourself up and be consistent, so you identify as one of the group. You might be recorded or filmed while making these proclamations, which, according to them, cements you within your new identity and makes you less likely to back out. Mind control, simply put, is a form of manipulation that uses the thoughts of individuals and conforms them to the wishes of the manipulator and can be done for multiple reasons. May this be for financial gain or to exert power over others who they deem less superior to them. Chapter 7. Reading people quickly and efficiently. Being able to scan people could help you decipher what a person might be thinking or predict how they might react in different situations. This skill is especially helpful when you need to tailor your response to what the individual might do. It can be used to manipulate the individual to respond in the manner of the manipulator. As an example, if the manipulator wants the individual to think of someone with facial hair, drawing constant attention to that body part will create a subconscious marker in that individual's mind. Later on, when the individual is placed in a scenario to describe the thought of facial hair, it will seem to them that the manipulator had read their mind. This is, in fact, not the case, as the manipulator planted the thought. Being able to read people can open the door to many such altercations and give you the ability to more accurately assess a scenario and the actions of the people in them. An open book. Being able to read people is not complicated, in the sense that the majority of people function openly and do not guard their body language. Knowing what cues to look for will allow you to assess the subtle actions of an individual and give you insight into the thoughts running through their heads. It is easy to miss some of the cues, and these are things you might be doing wrong that is taking away your ability to read people quickly and accurately. You might be ignoring the context. A person who crosses their arms in a cold room, or if they don't have armrests on the chair they are sitting in, don't have much meaning to their gesture. Put everything you see through a test of common sense. If someone acts a certain way in a situation, ask yourself if the behavior is typical or unusual. Looking for single telltale signs instead of the overall picture can turn out to be a big mistake. Actions that are consistent and can be grouped are the signals that tell you something. Ask yourself whether or not the actions of the individual are telling you something specific. Another mistake is not getting a baseline or normal operations of an individual. If those actions suddenly change and they start to act irregularly, then you know that something is up. Question whether they usually act like that, or is it something out of the norm? Being ignorant of biases can also be a downfall. If you have already made up your mind about a person, your judgment towards them will be greatly affected. The same is true if someone compliments or insults you. These will subconsciously turn your judgment toward that action. It is easy to fall in traps that function with these tactics, no matter how unbiased you might think you are. Your gut is generally very accurate, and this is why first impressions are very important. Regardless of whether the first impressions are correct or not, they can affect us in a major way, and swaying from the initial thoughts are slow and difficult. It is hard to change your first impression of someone, but doing so would benefit you. It has shown in studies that people are genuine in the first way they present themselves, whether it is confident, extroverted, etc. This is even more accurate when meeting attractive people for the first time, as you are more focused and evaluating them more deeply. People do judge a book by its cover, and more so when the book is more physically appealing. People can be taken on the visuals they choose to display, as they are usually accurate and deliberately used to make a statement. People make these identity claims as a subconscious need to be known. People want to be seen as their genuine selves rather than in a positive light, and will give up looking attractive to do so. Powerful people tend to be quiet, whereas less powerful people seem to speak out the most. This is also true for people with a greater sense of humor, are more intelligent than those with none. Being able to distinguish whether someone is trustworthy pushes us to focus on unconscious behavior that cannot be easily controlled to relay a message. Watch for signals like speech and behavioral imitation that could be indicators the individual feels connected to you on an emotional level. This can be faked, however. It becomes more difficult to carry over an entire conversation. People who often express themselves emotionally are people that you can more easily trust when looking at their body language. You can read a person's body language and the cues that come forward in clusters of 4: hand touching, face touching, crossing the arms, and leaning away. By themselves, these cues don't say much but can play a role in carrying an accurate message when done together. The purpose of taking everything into account about an individual is to avoid stereotyping and placing them into a particular group. You are also not weighing someone up for fear of physical harm, but rather for the possibility of being cheated or misled. It is very common for a man to see another man as more dominant if they have more masculine features, and even more so when a shorter man perceives these characteristics in a taller man. A big game changer is to pay close attention during your conversations. It's common for a person to lose focus somewhere here, and they might miss important cues or slips that the other individual might drop. If your incentive to pay attention and engage is high, you will be more accurate in assessing other people precisely. The motivation is not always high because it uses up more energy. However, the more motivated you are, the better your ability to discern specific things become. People who are attempting to cheat you conform to a set cluster of actions. They repeatedly follow 4 discernible cues. They constantly touch their hands, touch their face, they cross their arms, and they will lean away from you. These cues mean very little when done separately, but done together, they paint a very accurate picture of deceit. The higher the frequency of use in this cluster of actions, the less trustworthy the individual is. Paying attention to the way a person presents themselves should also not be discarded. Someone paying more attention to their appearance could indicate narcissism. A person wearing neat and formal attire is just trying to express their diligence, and someone wearing flashy, expensive clothes or displaying cleavage or muscle is trying to show off. Being able to tell if someone is interested in you can also be a bit of a task. Women tend to underestimate the level of interest men have in them, whereas men overestimate the level of interest a lady has in them. The less attractive the man, the more he might gauge the interest level a woman might have towards him. A telltale sign that a woman is interested in a person is her rate of speaking. A positive sign is if she is speaking smoothly and quickly, as opposed to a negative sign from her speaking hesitantly and awkwardly. Men and women also tend to deepen their voices when they talk to someone they are attracted to. Physical touch is also a big indicator. Touching a shoulder, forearm, or waist is a very good sign, and a brush to the face would be the equivalent to an ace in the hole. To sum it up, reading people comes down to taking context, cluster, baseline, and biases into account. Don't make the usual mistakes. When it comes to first impressions, trust your gut. They tend to be accurate. When someone is imitating you emotionally on a sustained and consistent basis, you can trust them. Pay attention to people. Bad people have tells, so without being obvious, try to pick up on them quickly. And if a man or woman fluctuates their voice while speaking to you or tries to make physical contact, they are flirting. Chapter 8. Raise your shield against narcissistic abuse. Narcissists have limited love for themselves and are generally pushed by a feeling of shame. They create the ideal image of themselves and convince themselves that they carry this image in reality. Within themselves, they feel the hole between the reality of their world and this figure they have created. There is a lot of effort placed in staying away from that shame and using destructive defense mechanisms that harm and cause pain to loved ones. The coping methods of the majority of narcissistic individuals are abusive. However, being abusive is not exclusive to narcissists. Being the victim of abuse can present many obstacles and make it difficult to identify the abuse. By constructing a support system for yourself and also learning how to protect yourself from it and become stronger is your best line of defense. Time to deal. Narcissistic abuse can come in a multitude of forms, such as mental, emotional, sexual, spiritual, physical, or financial abuse. Being bullied, belittled, accused, or blamed are a few forms of verbal abuse. To be able to identify this accurately, take the context, malevolence, and frequency of these actions before placing it into a category. Being manipulated is indirectly an action on someone to change their behavior to be beneficial to the goals of the manipulator. This can disguise the expression of aggression. The image of being harmless and even kind is put forward with an underlying sense of hostility. Being blackmailed emotionally is another abusive tactic, and behavior like warnings, threats, intimidations, or even punishments are included in this. It is a form of manipulation that is intended to evoke fear, guilt, and obligation. Gaslighting, which we discussed in a previous chapter, makes you believe that you are mentally incompetent. Constantly competing and always being on top, by any means, is sometimes taken with unethical measures that create negative contrasts with the narcissist and other people. They may also engage in sabotaging someone's endeavors or relationships for revenge or personal gain. Another method would be the victim being used or taken advantage of for personal benefit without taking into consideration the feeling or needs of said victim. Lying persistently to avoid responsibility or to gain personal desires is another form of narcissistic behavior. They might also try withholding small things regarding sex, money, affection, or communication. In other cases, they might be neglecting to fulfill the needs of the individual who falls under their responsibility. Invading your privacy or ignoring the boundaries of an individual, which includes stalking them or denying them physical privacy, is another abusive behavior they might display. They could partake in the act of trying to assassinate your character by spreading vicious rumors or lies, or with violence by attacking you or destroying your property. Abuse can also include controlling your finances by trying to dominate you economically or through theft or extortion creating debt, or they might gamble or sell your personal property. Lastly, isolating the victim from friends and family or keeping them from outside services and support by using the tactics mentioned above. Narcissists can be anywhere, and you might even have some in your social circle, noticing it may be challenging to break free from their influence. The worldview of a narcissist is unpredictable, and they swing depression to pompous superiority. Their negative feelings and views on the world are so strong that you experience it yourself. Usually it is difficult to make sense of this because it stems from their issues, and when directed towards you, you will feel blindsided. To deal with a narcissist is like dealing with a bully. Ignore the harshness as it gives them no satisfaction, and they will try to target someone else. Turn the other cheek when they try to lure you into a fight. Don't justify or defend your stance if you take the bait and get into an argument with them. Set clear boundaries when you talk to them and make it clear that what you say is what you mean. Don't take their criticism personally. Understand it is about them and their disorder. If you need to make a decision, opt for staying away and state this clearly. Do not go back on your choice and make sure to follow through. Believe in your feelings and trust your intuition. Your body can tell when we are being mistreated or if something seems wrong. Always remember that you are allowed to protect yourself. Don't rely on someone to come to your rescue. Stand up to the narcissist and stand behind your voice. Remember that everyone deserves to be treated fairly with kindness and compassion, and it is worth it to bring more goodness by setting an example for those around you. Chapter 9. Do you need a proper brainwash? Everyone has experienced the feeling of wanting to convince someone of a particular notion or product. This happens almost daily as we are inundated with advertisements and commercials for products and services to buy into and to other people's opinions of how we should act in certain situations. We are constantly told when to be angry or upset, what to eat or read, what to wear and how to look. This is all in the business of convincing. But in actuality, the art of persuasion, or brainwashing, can be very profitable for some. Before social media, televisions, billboards, or newspapers were made available to the masses for advertising, and you would only be approached if you were within a target audience. They would ignore you if you were not the desired clientele, and overall wouldn't have paid much attention to you. This changed, however, when social media became popular and these advertisements were specifically tailored to the individuals based on their online searches, clicks, shopping habits, subscriptions, as well as likes and dislikes. Information is gathered by the user's online presence, and concurrent ads will pop up, almost eerily, directly linking to these habits. You may have heard of an experiment called MK Ultra, run by the CIA as a series of experiments done on individuals that sometimes were not even aware were taking place. This is what happens when the government decides to take stock in mind control. Some were volunteers as human test subjects and were driven by finding answers to the key to brainwashing. Some subjects were even subjected to psychological torture that were eventually used against enemies of the United States. MK Ultra focused on testing a drug that could be administered to gain information, plant suggestive thoughts, discredit individuals, and other forms of mental control. The drug of choice was LSD, but other substances were also used before that. There were other trials that focused on identifying personalities, proved to be an easier form of manipulation, and individuals were more prone to drug-induced mind control. Keeping your head. Brainwashing is regularly referred to as a thought of reform and falls into the instance of social influence. This happens every minute of every day and is a collection of methods used to change the thoughts, actions, and beliefs of individuals. Persuasion differs in this as its goal is to change in attitude. It uses the education method, which is also known as the propaganda method, when an individual does not believe the teachings and tries to social influence by trying to change the beliefs of an individual. These are severe forms of social influence, and should they be combined, the approach can cause an individual to change their way of thought without agreeing to it. It requires complete isolation and the victim to be highly dependent because it is very intrusive. This is why it generally occurs within cults and prison camps. Full control must be exercised over the victim to be able to control things like their sleep patterns, eating schedules, bathroom habits, and other basic human needs to create dependency on the brainwasher. The victim gets broken down systematically during this process and gets pushed to a point where the victim no longer has a functioning identity. This is where the brainwasher can start conditioning the victim to replace their attitude, actions, beliefs, and thoughts to conform to the current environment. Brainwashing is possible under the right circumstances, and there are a few that see it as unlikely or as a less severe form of influence than what is depicted in social media. Some think it requires threats or physical harm to be considered brainwashing, and under this, a majority of extremist cults do not practice brainwashing in its true form because they do not physically abuse newcomers. Relying on non-physical compulsion as an effective means of getting an individual to conform falls under other definitions thereof. There are many different definitions. However, it is believed by experts that if the conditions are ideal, the effects of brainwashing are mostly short-term and the victim regains their old identity, or it hides away until the new identity is no longer enforced. The question regarding indoctrination is, will the results be similar when used across different cultures and the variety of personality types, or does it only latch on to victims who are highly susceptible to influence? Steps used to create the ideal environment to brainwash a victim can be used successfully, starting with assaulting their identity and making them feel that they are in the wrong and need to better themselves, as well as creating guilt and making them feel guilty for things they may not even have control over. This will get them to betray themselves, opening them up and pushing them towards their breaking point. When the breaking point is reached, they become more lenient to the changes that are suggested, and it is easier to push them in the direction that you want them to go. They will feel compelled to confess things they think they want to achieve and their shortcomings. Channeling guilt can keep a person in line and keep them on the desired path, which will lead them to feel that they have reached a place where this guilt can be released. They start to feel harmony and progress towards their new self as they progress towards conformity. Finally, they confess their new identity and go through a process of rebirth, where they emerge as an individual that has conformed to the new way of thinking and with new beliefs and behaviors. This is without the victim's consent. However, the victim is not aware of this and might even deny it if someone from an old social group might point it out. Brainwashing is a powerful tool of influence and can be used as a means of profit. Victims don't realize that it is slowly creeping into their minds and changing aspects of themselves to conform to a new norm. This is what makes it difficult to shake off or snap out of it.